So our topic is regulating fossil fuels in India. Now for context, first of all, let's describe what a fossil fuel is. A fossil fuel is a natural fuel such as coal or gas to be used for energy sources. Now, however, fossil fuels and their emissions, also known as greenhouse gases, lead to multiple problems for environmental and health concerns, such as global warming and air pollution. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, 9 out of the 10 most air-polluted cities come from India, a country who is heavily reliant on fossil fuels, as shown by this graph through their increase of coal consumption. Now, with this in mind, this brings up a topic for debate for government and economy to decide on how to regulate these fossil fuels for a balance for economy and environmental issues.
So the question we developed from this context is, should fossil fuels be regulated in India? And the 3 solutions we developed were: Solution 1, further regulate fossil fuel usage; Solution 2, maintain current regulations; or Solution 3, eliminate all regulations. And the solution we chose was India's government should further regulate fossil fuel usage.
To start off, by looking into the political lens, we can see what current regulations India already has in place to limit fossil fuels. The first one is the intended nationally determined contribution, which is part of the Paris Agreement, whose main goal is to limit global warming. Now, through these show some targets, but the overall target for this contribution is to reduce 2030 emission intensity to a third below 2005 emissions. However, because India is one of the fastest growing economies, this projected target is not possible to accommodate for this growing economy, and which then makes this regulation and target not optimal. Another regulation India has in place is the Clean Environment Cess. Now, this is kind of similar to a carbon tax, but for India, they tax polluting coal industries, which then allocates that money from the tax to funds like the National Clean Energy Fund, which was used to research clean energy technologies to use instead of fossil fuels. However, as shown by this graph, the orange line shows the money accumulated from the tax, and these lines show what was actually spent for the fund. There is a big gap here that's missing from the allocated money, which shows that because the government did not properly regulate the tax, the current regulations put in place, such as the cess, is not that effective.
So now from an economic lens. So around the world there are a bunch of countries, which includes India, and they give grants of money to companies that they can use to benefit their businesses and their industries, and these grants are known as subsidies. So according to a paper that was published in the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and it researched basically energy subsidies, which are subsidies for all energy, and in India, these energy subsidies, approximately 80% of them are for fossil fuels, and as you can see to the graph on the left, in 2014, those subsidies cost approximately $35 billion, and in 2016, excuse me, they cost approximately $20 billion. So despite this decrease in cost of these subsidies, they still account for a major part of India's budget, and with our solution, which is to further regulate fossil fuels, if you're further regulating them, you're going to decrease the amount of fossil fuels that are used, and consequently the cost of all of these subsidies will also decrease, because these subsidies only exist because of the really high use of fossil fuels. And the graph on the right here shows the costs that come from fossil fuel emissions, and the health and environmental costs from fossil fuel emissions add up to approximately 8.7% of India's GDP, which is roughly $200 to $300 billion. And once again, with our solution, if we were to further regulate, we would decrease the use of fossil fuels, which would also decrease all of these costs because you wouldn't have as much air pollution, and you could use all this extra money and invest it into other industries, which could lead to further economic prosperity in the future. So now, as I previously mentioned, one major implication of our solution is that you're going to be saving a bunch of money, which you can later invest into other industries. Furthermore, agriculture is going to be positively affected because according to a study in the Journal of Climatology, it stated that for every 1 degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature in India, India's crop yield decreases by approximately 3 to 5%. And India's agriculture accounts for approximately 1/4 of their overall income. And with our solution, if we were to decrease fossil fuel use, which is what we're proposing to do, the temperature wouldn't increase by that much, and consequently India wouldn't be losing as much, their crop yield would not be decreasing by as much. However, there is one con and major limitation to our solution, which is that you're going to have less electricity generation, because currently electricity is needed for everything, and you have fossil fuels which are needed for energy, and with less fossil fuels you might not be able to make up the energy deficit. And according to a study in the American Economic Association, it stated that at the current level of shortages in India, companies would lose approximately 8% in revenue, and if we were to further regulate these fossil fuels, these deficits and these losses in revenue could further increase.
According to the scientific lens, it is necessary to regulate the use of fossil fuels. The more emission that there is of the fossil fuels, the more detrimental it is to the health of the people. The health of women and children is affected every day because they spend their time at home preparing meals and being exposed to the fumes, and the health of men who spend their day mining for these resources. There are many risks involved with mining for fossil fuels. There have been collapses of mines and many other things that puts their life in danger. And there are many diseases that are also involved. A Harvard University study found a link between cardiovascular, lung, and kidney diseases with the surface mining practices. And in addition, in India, fossil fuel and biomass-based energy are major causes of air pollution, particularly emissions from transport, coal-fired mines and power plants, and traditional cook stoves. Fossil fuels can spread by train cars, barges, and trucks, which all run on diesel, a major form of nitrogen dioxide and soot. And coal produces several hundred kilograms of solid waste in the form of ash, as well as 8 tons of carbon dioxide and other harmful gases are released into the atmosphere. The use of fossil fuels in everyday life has caused the demand to increase to a point where the Indian environment is not able to support it any longer. So with further regulated usage, it would cause less pollution, which would benefit the health of the people in nearby areas, and many mines would be shut down, so that would reduce the casualties on the work sites, and then resources would also be preserved in the country, and it would protect the environment, but the country would have to turn to another source of energy.
So the pros and cons of the other solution, so number 2, which was to maintain current regulations, the pro is you would be maintaining your electricity production, and companies would still be losing money and revenue according to that study from the American Economic Association. And the major con of that solution would also be you would be maintaining current pollution levels, which means that the environment will keep on getting worse and worse and worse, and you're still going to have all of those environmental and health costs that we previously mentioned. And the other option that we chose, which was option 3, which is to decrease. The pro of that is you're going to have greater electricity generation, so companies won't be losing as much in their revenue and profit. However, you're going to have more pollution, which is going to mean that the environment's going to get even worse, and the rate at which it gets worse will increase. And with more pollution, you're going to have more debts, you're going to have more health and environmental costs. However, our solution, we feel, is all-encompassing because the pros of it is you're going to have less pollution, which means you're going to have more resources. You won't be stripping the environment of all of its resources. With less pollution, you're going to have all these costs and all these environmental and health costs also decreasing, which makes this economically and scientifically viable. However, at first, you may have less electricity generation, But with our solution, since you're saving so much money, you can invest this extra saved money into the renewable energy industry, for example, and you can help boost that energy, the renewable energy industry, so that the energy from renewable resources will make up for this electricity deficit that will occur if there's.
So for our solution, one way we can further regulate is a cap and trade approach. This would have the government set limits to corporations on how much fossil fuels they can use. And this also brings another benefit for the economy because this can create an inner commerce of selling excess unused fossil fuel emissions. And here are the bricks in.
Okay. Come on. Having finished your project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that, if addressed, would make you feel more confident about your conclusion?
We did not research the social lens, and it would really benefit by looking at the population of the people in poverty in India, because they rely on the jobs that the mines provide them from the fossil fuels, and that's how they get money, even though they're being exposed to all that, and they're not able to pay for their health once they are exposed to the fumes.
Christine, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact of your overall understanding of this problem your group identified?
I think Iman's scientific and health lens had the most impact on me because this has an impact on human health, which affects us all, especially for the population in India who do experience a lot of heavy air pollution, not only from the fossil fuels but their environment as well. Another reason is a big, heavily debated topic such as global warming, and fossil fuels are known because of Iman's lens have shown that they've linked to global warming.
Okay. And lastly, describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of group discussion.
So we were originally discussing possible solutions after we had completed our IRRs, and we were thinking of first of all, just either further regulate. First we just had two, which was further regulate or cancel, but then Christine was talking about how there already are current regulations in place that might actually work, such as the environmental cess agreement that she mentioned. So when we talked about all of those, we were able to actually come up with our solutions, and without that input from the other group members, we wouldn't have had that solution, and I wouldn't have realized that there's another solution that potentially could be done.